Imagine being judged by your appearance, only to shock everyone with a single sentence. What would you do? If this story caught your attention, leave a comment below and let us know where you're watching from. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support the channel, so we can keep bringing you more incredible stories like this one. The tension in the room was palpable as the grand negotiations between the British and Sheikh Emir, a powerful billionaire, took a sharp turn. With a quick motion, Sheikh Emir slammed his hand on the table, his anger rising as he muttered a sharp insult in Arabic, his eyes glaring around the room. His words were like daggers, meant to cut through the fragile diplomacy in the air. No one in the room understood his words, but the sense of offense was clear. A palpable silence filled the space, broken only by the sudden sound of a waitress, Emily Matthews, quietly mopping nearby. Without a moment's hesitation, she lifted her head, her expression calm, and responded in flawless Arabic. The room froze. Sheikh Emir, mid-stride toward the door, halted. His eyes locked onto Emily, his expression shifting from fury to stunned disbelief. Who was this woman who had dared to step into his world and speak his language? As the room watched, Emily stood tall, her presence now commanding the attention of everyone present. Her simple uniform and unremarkable appearance suddenly seemed insignificant, her words carried weight, and they were not to be ignored. The balance of power had just shifted. The room was thick with tension as Sheikh Emir, still standing with his back to the group, paused mid-step toward the door. His face contorted in confusion as Emily Matthews, the waitress he had just insulted, spoke with an impeccable, unaccented Arabic that echoed through the room. Her words cut through the silence, effectively shifting the power dynamic in an instant. "Forgive them, Your Excellency," she said softly but with authority. "That is not what they meant. They intended to assure fair partnership." The simplicity and clarity of her words, spoken in perfect Arabic, stunned everyone. As Emily finished, her eyes met Sheikh Emir's gaze, and for a moment, the air seemed to stand still. His initial anger faded, replaced by a piercing curiosity. He turned slowly, narrowing his eyes, assessing her with a new intensity. "You speak my language?" he asked, his voice low, as though testing her sincerity. Emily nodded, the quiet confidence in her stance unshaken. "I lived in Oman for 8 years," she replied. The room fell into silence once again. The arrogance that had once filled the air now felt out of place. Simon, the smug British negotiator, stood frozen, his mouth slightly agape, his hand midair as he fumbled to grasp the significance of the moment. Emily wasn't just a waitress. She was someone who carried knowledge, experience, and a deep understanding of this world of power and influence, all hidden beneath a simple uniform. The unexpected had happened. Emily had not only diffused the situation, but she had also revealed the depths of her own story. And it was only just beginning. The tension in the room had changed. It wasn't just about the negotiations anymore, it had become a subtle power play, a shift that no one had anticipated. Sheikh Emir stood motionless, his gaze still locked on Emily Matthews. The rest of the room, still reeling from her flawless response, couldn't look away either. Then, Claire, a member of the British team, couldn't resist the temptation to belittle Emily. She leaned in, her voice sharp and laced with mockery. "Who let the cleaning lady in here?" she whispered loudly, her laughter ringing out. The room, sensing a potential rift, murmured with quiet amusement. But Emily's expression didn't change. She was not bothered. Instead, she turned toward Claire, her eyes unwavering. She spoke softly, yet clearly, in Arabic, "Intent matters." Claire's laughter faltered, her smile turning into a tight, uneasy line. She couldn't tell if she had been directly addressed or not, but the words hit their mark. The mood in the room shifted again. The smugness of Claire and her colleague, Jonathan, the man with the flashy watch, now seemed like a faint echo. Emily was no longer just a maid, she was an equal, if not more. The British team watched, their discomfort palpable. Emily wasn't fighting back with words or anger, but with quiet dignity. She was showing them that appearances were deceiving, and in that moment, it was clear, she belonged here just as much as they did. As the laughter died down, Paul, the hotel manager, stepped into the spotlight. His movements were quick and sharp, his face flushed with anger. He made a beeline for Emily, grabbing her arm in a forceful grip. "What are you doing?" he hissed, his voice sharp and loud enough to cut through the stillness of the room. "You have no right to interfere in this negotiation. This is not your place." The room shifted uncomfortably. The British team exchanged glances, unsure of how to react. Some of them looked down, pretending not to notice the confrontation, while others nervously checked their phones. Sheikh Amir, his arms crossed, simply watched the unfolding scene with a silent intensity. Emily didn't pull away. She didn't argue. She remained calm, her face expressionless, a picture of composure. She didn't need to speak, her presence alone held weight. She simply nodded at Paul, acknowledging his words without a hint of fear or confrontation. Without another word, she turned and began walking towards the door, her steps slow and deliberate. The room seemed to hold its breath, unsure of what would happen next. As she reached the doorway, Zaid's assistant, a young man with a neatly trimmed beard and nervous eyes, stepped forward. "Leaving already?" he mocked, his voice laced with derision. "The room's not clean yet." Emily paused for a moment, her fingers resting lightly on the doorframe. She turned slightly to face him and spoke in Arabic, her voice measured but sharp. "Even cleanliness starts with respect." The assistant's smirk vanished, his expression falling as his confidence cracked. The room fell silent, and Emily, with her usual composed demeanor, turned and exited the room, leaving everyone in stunned silence. The tension remained, but it wasn't just in the air, it was in the shift of power that had just occurred. As Emily walked down the hall, her steps calm and unhurried, the atmosphere in the room behind her changed. The British team was clearly off balance now. They hadn't expected a woman in a maid's uniform to stand up to them, let alone speak with such command and fluency in Arabic. It was as if Emily had become the fulcrum, shifting the entire power dynamic with a few simple words. Back in the negotiation room, Sheikh Amir leaned back in his chair, his arms crossed, and his eyes never leaving the door where Emily had just walked out. The other assistants, still unsure of what had just transpired, exchanged awkward glances. They had underestimated her, and now, they couldn't shake the nagging sense that they had missed something crucial. After a long pause, Zaid cleared his throat, and his voice, when he spoke again, was softer but no less firm. "Let her sit," he said, his words hanging in the air. Nobody moved for a moment. Paul, the hotel manager, still looking unsettled, stepped forward to protest, but one of Zaid's assistants quickly pulled out a chair, and the room went silent. The tension was thick now. The moment had shifted completely, and Emily, without having to utter another word, had commanded respect from the most powerful man in the room. She entered, still in her maid's uniform, but she no longer felt out of place. She had stepped into the room of powerful figures, and now, they were watching her, waiting for her to translate, not just words, but the future of the negotiation itself. Days after the tense moment in the Crystal Alner Hotel, Madison Carter found herself receiving an invitation to join the language advisory panel at the Abu Dhabi Energy Summit. A former maid turned key player in a billion-dollar negotiation, she was now officially part of something far bigger than anyone had expected. Madison had taken the room's breath away, and now, she was taking the world's attention. People who once ignored her began to see her as a force to be reckoned with. Her invitation wasn't just a recognition of her linguistic skills, but also a symbol of her strength, intellect, and grace under pressure. The world had underestimated her. But now, it had no choice but to acknowledge her brilliance. And as she moved forward, Emily, quiet, steady, and unassuming, had found her place among the most powerful, redefining her role in the world with every step. As Madison's reputation soared, the consequences for those who had mocked her were swift and inevitable. Paul, the hotel manager, found himself quietly replaced, his career crumbling as the fallout from his confrontation with Madison reached its peak. Tara, the snide hotel clerk, saw her reputation tarnished, and soon after, her sponsorship deal was pulled. Even the British team, once smug in their assumptions, suffered the repercussions of their underestimation of Madison. Contracts were lost, and reputations shattered. But Madison? She didn't seek revenge. She simply continued to work, her focus never wavering. Her quiet strength had proven to be more powerful than any insult, any mockery, or any position of power. In the end, she had shown the world that the true worth of a person was never tied to their title, but to their character and ability to persevere. Madison's success continued to grow. Her influence at the Abu Dhabi Energy Summit marked the beginning of a new chapter in her life, one that saw her rise from a maid to a linguistic specialist in the highest circles of global power. Yet, through it all, Madison remained humble, letting her actions speak louder than any words could. Back in the hotel, the staff began to treat her with respect, not because of her newfound title, but because of the quiet dignity she had always carried. The respect she had earned, not through force, but through grace, became a lesson for all. Madison had shown them that true power doesn't come from status or wealth. It comes from staying true to yourself, no matter how the world may try to define you. In life, true strength often lies in quiet resilience, not loud proclamations. Madison Carter's journey teaches us that respect is earned through integrity, knowledge, and grace under pressure, not by titles or appearances. No matter how others perceive you, stay true to your values and let your actions speak louder than words. The world may underestimate you, but with patience and quiet confidence, you can shift the narrative and define your own worth. If you resonate with this story, like, subscribe, and ring the bell to support the channel, so we can continue sharing inspiring lessons together.